Welcome back to the Shaky Sonnet Show, where today we'll be looking at Sonnets 94 and 95, where the veil has dropped, or the veil has been lifted from our narrator's eyes. Whatever it is that veils tend to do, I'm not really sure, but we'll say the veil is gone in any case. I am looking at myself to make sure I'm okay, and I am Tootight Lautrec, the drag laureate of the Sonnetarium, and here we are once again in the Sonnetarium at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainders section of an unnamed local library, which may or may not have some fine feline friends named Patience and Fortitude on the front steps, who are themselves as stone, unmoved, cold, and to temptations slow? Or are they simply just resting? Or are they ready to pounce now that they see clearly what they never saw before, much like our narrator today in Sonnets 94 and 95. So yes, the veil has dropped or been lifted, or whatever it is that veils do, and Sonnets 94 and 95 are a revelation to our narrator, at least. As we turn from Sonnet 93, the one, where the narrator is saying, "Oh, your face is so sweet, it shows no evil," to 94 and 95, where what seemed to be sweet before suddenly sours so much that our narrator's eyes water. And clearly, the gunk of love that blinded him before is gone. And now, with my improved eyesight, with my improved eyesight, let's take a look at Sonnet 94. Sonnet 94. They that have power to hurt and will do none, that do not do the thing they most do show, who, moving others, are themselves as stone, unmoved, cold, and to temptations slow. They rightly do inherit heaven's graces, and husband nature's riches from expense. They are the lords and owners of their faces, others but stewards of their excellence. The summer's flower is to the summer sweet, though to itself it only live and die. But if that flower with base infection meet, the basest weed outbraves his dignity. For sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds. Lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. Well, I'll take off my glasses because the bifocals can make you dizzy, And I'll look at my notes that I've prepared. Okay, Sonnet 94. It actually breaks down into more of a sestet and an octet, but it also serves as quatrain, quatrain, quatrain couplet. So we'll deal with the sestet first. They that have power to hurt and will do none, that do not do the thing they most do show. Well, do, da, da, da. That's all I have to say to you. Or maybe not. Maybe I've got a few more lines left. The first quatrain is saying some people basically do good. Some people, even though they have the power to hurt others, don't do it. And then we get into the first part of the second quatrain, which is the last part of the sestet. They rightly do inherit heaven's graces and husband nature's riches from expense. Some people know how to husband, and husbandry is, of course, the caretaking of a farm or a household, but it's also, husbandry. Know how to be a good husband. And some people know how to husband. They know how not to spread their seed across any field that sprawls itself in front of them. They know how to pick and choose. So they rightly do inherit heaven's graces and husband nature's riches from expense. Expense meaning spending, and we've learned about spending before, how if you spend your seed, it's not always a good thing, especially if it's not in the field that you want it to be sown in. They are the lords and owners of their faces, others but stewards of their excellence. Be a lord, don't be a steward. Contain yourself, man, is what's going on in the second quatrain. Third quatrain, the summer's flower, and here we've got a lot of flower power going on. If you look at lines 9, 11, and 13, you've got flower, flower, sour, and this rhymes with power in line 1, they that have power to hurt. In the third quatrain, the summer's flower is to the summer sweet, though to itself it only live and die. But if that flower with base infection meet, the basest weed outbraves his dignity. Base infection, well, pew. Is that a rotting rose or is that your cheating heart? I can't really tell anymore. Or possibly, is that the breath of other lovers on your lips? Or is it the perfume of other lovers on your skin? I really can't tell anymore. I'm running out of juice over here trying to figure it out. So we have this whole idea of flowers with base infection. We've seen that before, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on in another episode. But the couplet ends, for sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds, lilies that fester smell far worse than deeds. And here the passivity of the first few lines, they that have power to work, there's no direct implication here. There's a sort of passive, some people do this, some people do that, some people do the other. When we finally get to the couplet, for sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds, and here the sourest rhymes with flower, rhymes with power. Sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds, lilies that fester smell far worse than deeds. And here we have sort of an active decay going on. It's not just a passive, some people do this, some people that. There's an actual turning toward festering, a much more active verb. And deeds and weeds rhyme for a reason. They both sink to high heaven in the opinion of the narrator of his beloved. So the couplet in 94 also appeared in a play called Edward III by Anonymous, which was entered into the Stationer's Register in 1595 and published in 1596 and 1599. And there are questions about whether that play was written by Shakespeare or whether it was co-written by Shakespeare or whether Shakespeare just lifted a few lines out of it for his own couplet for this particular sonnet. And it's only recently in 1996 that it was actually accepted into the full work of Shakespeare's work and attributed to Shakespeare, but the jury still seems to be out with some people. And I'll provide you with a wiki page, the source of all knowledge, but it'll at least get you started on your own research if you really wanted to figure that out for yourself. But I just wanted to mention it because it's peculiar to have an entire couplet copied from someplace else, and there's 94 is the beginning of what I believe is a trio, 94, 95, and 96, and there's a lot of couplet shenanigans going on in here, which, again, I won't get into too much in this episode. I'll talk about next week. But Sonnet 95, as we progress to the second part of it, contains more unveiling and cuts the beloved right to the quick. And so Sonnet 95, I'll do it without my glasses this time, as bifocals make me a little dizzy, and I can't get much more dizzy. Dr. Franken's sonnet won't allow it. I could be in trouble. Sonnet 95. How sweet and lovely dost thou make the shame, which, like a canker in the fragrant rose, doth spot the beauty of thy budding name. Oh, in what sweets dost thou thy sins enclose? That tongue that tells the story of thy days, making lascivious comments on thy sport, cannot dispraise, but in a kind of praise, naming thy name, blesses an ill report. Oh, what a mansion have those vices got, which for their habitation chose out thee, where beauty's veil doth cover every blot, and all things turn to fair that eyes can see. Take heed, dear heart, of this large privilege. The hardest knife, ill used, doth lose his edge. So, the first quatrain, we go from the generalities of 94, where some people do this and some people do that. We get right to the point. How sweet and lovely dost thou, I'm talking to you, how sweet and lovely dost thou make the shame, and doth spot the beauty of thy budding name. And this isn't a spot of beauty like a beauty spot on a face that brings out the finer features of an already lovely face. This is a stain. This kind of spot is a stain indicating you're a fake. You're a great, big, beautiful fake. And then we continue in the second quatrain with the, well, even in the first quatrain with the rotten flower theme, the canker and the fragrant rose. Second quatrain moves on to the tongue. That tongue that tells the story of thy days, making lascivious comments on thy sport. Well, it's actually not your tongue, it's somebody else's tongue who's talking about you. And there's quite a bit of titillation in this quatrain. Lascivious comments on thy sport. I mean, you can just imagine if they had Google back then, they'd be Googling it to see the sex tape. Making lascivious comments on thy sport, cannot dispraise but in a kind of praise, naming thy name, blesses an ill report. Well, those who tell the tale of how you wag your lovely tail, or how you wag your lovely rose, looking for any comer, get a little bit of extra titillation just by naming your name. Because yes, we all want to picture you in the act. Because who wouldn't? You're gorgeous. You're a big fake, but you're gorgeous. And yeah, we'd all like to see you doing it. Everyone. So all I have to do is mention your name, and everyone perks up because your name is in it. And even though they're telling naughty tales about you, they want to know more. Third quatrain. Oh, what a mansion have those vices got, which for their habitation chose out thee. Of all the things you do, of all your bad things, they happen to have chosen out you, this glorious mansion of a being, this beautiful, gorgeous thing that houses these rotten little traits. Where beauty's veil doth cover every blot. And that blot, I just love that word. It's just a lovely, lovely word. We've seen it before. Here we are talking about your blots. You're filth, but you're gorgeous filth. Your worst qualities are encased in gorgeous, gorgeous exterior, and yes, beauty's veil doth cover every blot. And most of us are blinded by that beauty. And then we get to the couplet. Take heed, dear heart. That's pretty severe. Take heed, dear heart. Beauty fades, is what he's saying, much like Eliot. It reminded me of Eliot. Consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you. Beauty fades, it won't last forever. The hardest knife, ill-used, doth lose his edge. And here, yes, that's a phallic knife. There's no doubt about it. And it's got a gender. It's a his edge. The hardest knife doth lose his edge. Beauty fades, and even if it doesn't, for some people, once people realize the rotter that you are, nobody will care about how good you look. So that's 94 and 95. Taken together, 94 and 95 are a pretty potent pair. 94 speaks in generalities, mostly positive examples of how people should act and should be, followed by a generalized couplet, implying, I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about you. And the 95 doles out the negatives right next to the positives in the first quatrain and applies them directly to the beloved. There are no more generalities. These are directed directly to the beloved. Sweet, shame, canker, rose, spot, beauty, sweets, sin, and then closes with that rather violent warning of the phallic knife that dulls itself with too much use. So in actuality, I did want to present this as a trio, where 96 was the crowning glory of these three sonnets. But 96 goes further into the argument and provides more real specifics of the beloved's faults, but I have been trying to keep these down to at least 20 minutes or under if I could. And so I would argue that if you're looking for extra credit, and by extra credit I mean my everlasting appreciation, you should read 94, 95, and 96 together as a trio and see if you agree that they are a trio. 96 has other issues or qualities that need a full discussion all its own. So as far as 94 and 95 are concerned, is there a gender specified? Well, I said that the knife is a phallic knife, and my horn's losing a little bit of steam there. And the his edge points out that the beloved is probably a male. Dramatically, we've got the anonymously written Edward III, and I provided the opening to the rabbit hole where you can go and do your own research on that and come back to me and let me know what you find out. Narratively, the veil has been lifted, apparently, maybe, but certainly the narrator has switched from passive Patsy to the warning William. And could this be blackmail, where he's saying, take heed, dear heart? That's pretty strong language. Is it just obsessive stalker talk? Are there revenge sonnets coming? Or are we headed toward a real permanent break in this couple that we've been following through 95 sonnets? We'll see. In terms of story, these 2 or 3 sonnets certainly do ramp up the tension. So we'll get into the 96 next week, and we'll look at the conclusion of sonnets 94, 95, and 96. Meanwhile, all that I can ask is that you keep your eye peeled for wonder, because it is all around. Pay attention. Until next week, I am Tootight Lautrec. Mwah.